Hi honeybees, my name is Raven, this is Eden, and welcome back to our channel. Subscribe to become part of the hive. Be sure to like and ring the notification bell. Thanks honeybees! Enjoy the video. Today I want to talk about two movies that I saw recently. One that I was really looking forward to because some actors I really liked are in it and I'm nothing if not an actor girly. And the other one I really was not looking forward to because I was just simply not a fan of the director's previous works. But I thought everyone deserves another chance. I'm always going to give it another shot. And those two movies are The Bikeriders and Kinds of Kindness. And now I'm going to look different for the rest of the video. Enjoy! I'm sure you can probably guess which movie I was looking forward to at least, and the other one that I wasn't looking forward to just based off of what I wrote on my chalkboard today. I'm not sure if it's registering very well on camera. Number one, Austin lover. Number one, Yorgos hater. This is supposed to be a puke emoji. I don't know. It's hard to draw emojis with chalk, but those are the movies we're going to talk about. And I'm going to jump right into just the one that I saw first and the one that I was looking forward to, The Bikeriders. So The Bikeriders, I feel like I don't have a whole lot to say about it in general because it was fine. Like I said, I was really looking forward to it. I'm a huge Austin Butler fan. I have been for a while now. Elvis really kicked it off for me. I love that movie. And I liked him before that, but that really did it for me, solidified me as a fan. And I love Tom Hardy in The Bikeriders. Just the idea of like a biker club in like the 60s, 70s. It looked like it was going to be really good, really fun, you know. And then when I watched it, you know, it was good, but I guess I wasn't expecting it to be as much of a character study as it was. I was expecting like, you know, a story, a plot. Not that there wasn't one, it's just it wasn't as eventful as I would have expected, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It wasn't very linear. I wasn't expecting it to kind of jump around. I watched the trailer. I didn't really like read about what it was about or anything like that. I just kind of wanted to go into it with no expectations other than thinking it was going to be good because two actors I really like are in it. So it's about this biker club started by Tom Hardy's character, and the framing device of the movie is that many of these characters, mainly Jodie Comer, who is the lead role of Kathy, she's being interviewed about this biker club over the course of several years. I think it's 1965 to 1973, so that kind of less than a decade time period, and how this club developed, starting with Tom Hardy founding it because he thought that motorcycles were cool and he liked racing them, and he decided to make a club about it. And slowly over the years, it grows and grows and grows, and a few different things happen along the way that shape these characters and shape this story. But it's not like one story with like one plot going on. It's just kind of the development of these characters. And I would call that a character study, which is interesting. I do like a character study. I like movies that aren't about what's happening. It's about how the characters handle whatever's happening, how the characters interact with each other. And we are learning about these people more than we are learning about any particular story. And I like that because these were definitely interesting characters. The characters were the best part of the movie, for sure. They were the main focus, how these characters act, how they act with each other, the relationships that they build with each other and break with each other. And it subverted my expectations in that way. I wasn't expecting that kind of thing from this movie, but that's what we got. And so I kind of really just want to talk about the characters more than anything that actually happened in the film, starting with Tom Hardy. I mean, like I said, I really like him. I've yet to see a role of his that I don't like. Not that I love every movie he's in, but he's always great in everything that he does. And this is another one of those movies where he does an accent.
I'm thinking of starting a writing club. I'm Johnny. We're the Vandals. They're scared of us.
And I love a Tom Hardy accent because they never really sound quite like a real accent. They're their own unique thing, and you get the idea. My favorite example is Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock in Venom, in the Venom films, which I love. I love both Venom movies so far. I'm sure I'm going to love the third one when it comes out. Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock just has the most unique like cadence about him, the most unique way of speaking when he's just supposed to be just like a guy that lives in San Francisco. I think like from New York, so it's kind of like a weird East Coast accent / California accent.
There are good people in this world, a lot of them, and then there are bad people. You have to tell the difference. The deal is you will only ever be allowed to touch, harm, hurt, possibly, very possibly eat very, very bad people, but never, ever, ever good people. All right? Fine. Good.
It's great. I love it. And so it's similar to that, and The Bikeriders takes place in Chicago. So he has this sort of sort of Chicago accent, this sort of caricature of a Chicago accent, but not too silly, just enough to keep it interesting. It just really elevates everything he says, because he's put such thought behind this, such care behind the character he's putting on. I feel like Tom Hardy is the type of guy that really cares about who he is playing and really thinks as that person and tries to become that person for the sake of the story, and I really appreciate that. And I liked his development over the course of the film, because like I said, it's over the course of a couple years, going from this biking club being this really small thing among friends to being this like almost nationwide, at least a couple states wide club gang, and it just eventually gets out of hand, and it's really interesting to see his character be affected by that, seeing something that he created grow and grow and grow past the point of his own control and comprehension. And so he kind of loses it a little bit throughout the story. He's unhinged in a way that's more controlled. Not to compare it to Eddie Brock again, but his character Johnny in the Bikeriders, Tom Hardy's character Johnny, feels like Eddie Brock, but like a more confident version, a little bit of a less train wreck version, but that train wreck is still in there. He wants to be in control. He's trying to be in control, but situations around him are making it so that he can't be in control. And I think that was a unique road to go down for this sort of character. You'd think he'd be kind of like the big tough guy that can hold it down, that doesn't get too much for him, but it doesn't. And you can imagine, at least I can, how hard it can be seeing something that you put a lot of care into and started just kind of turn against you over time and become something that you don't recognize. So that was kind of the arc to Tom Hardy's character. Now, Austin Butler, I don't even know where to start with him. First of all, probably the hottest a man has ever been in a movie. At least like top 3, the hottest a man has ever looked in a movie. When he was on screen, I could not look away. He was just radiating this amazing energy, this like sexy bad boy energy, which is exactly what they were going for, I'm sure. And that's what draws in our main character, Kathy, to him. Kathy and Austin Butler's character, Benny, are together throughout pretty much the entire movie. And their meet cute, it's almost immediate that they have their meet cute in the story, because that's when the interview begins, is how she met Benny and became a part of this club as a club wife. And Jodie Comer as Kathy also has an amazing accent, an amazing, very, very over-the-top Midwestern accent. But I loved it. It was just entertaining no matter what she was saying.
And that's when I seen Benny standing over at the pool table. Boy, who's that good-looking guy over at the pool table?
Oh, Kathy, you don't want to go out with him.
Why not? They don't look like the rest of these animals.
And it's not that she's a comedic character, but like also she kind of is. It's just in her portrayal. I really like the choices that went into making her character. Choices by her, choices by the director, Jeff Nichols, I'm sure. I really enjoyed her character. I just want to say that off the bat. And the romance between her and Austin Butler's character, I don't know. I was expecting more of a romance. Like I honestly thought this was going to be like half biker drama, half romance. And it kind of wasn't. And that's really because of, that's not a bad thing, by the way, I'm just observing. And it kind of wasn't because of Austin Butler's character, Benny. He's the wild guy. He's the guy that doesn't care about anything. And I really like that portrayal too. I feel like that's different than anything I've seen Austin Butler do before. Like way less emotional than I've seen him be in any other film. There was emotion there for sure, especially at the end. He definitely had his own arc that was mainly an emotional arc, which was great. I love that. There was a lot of build up there, a lot of build up to a moment at the end that really paid off, that really solidified who he was as a character and who he became over the years. But from a lot of it, he's the wild guy that doesn't care. He's the guy to throw the first punch. He's the guy that doesn't cry even when he gets his foot broken, when he gets like jumped. When something bad happens to him, he just like does not care. He just wants to ride his bikes with his friends, and that's all he wants to do. So he's with Kathy, and he goes through a bit of effort to get with Kathy. He waits for her for like a day and a half straight outside of her apartment to kind of wear her down, which is, I'd say, a nice romantic gesture, but in the most nonchalant way possible. He just sits there and waits for her until she's like, all right. But I'm sure most of that's because he's just so hot, he probably knows he doesn't have to do anything really beyond that, just waiting for her to decide that she wants him. But other than that, he seems to always kind of choose the biker club and choose Johnny over her. But she sticks with him anyway, too. Eventually, she comes out on top at the end because, spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen the movie, they end up together. It's silly to say that they end up together, but it's because of the events of the film where they get married early on. They're together through most of the film. He does leave for a while. She wants him to quit the club because it's bad for him. He's getting jumped and he's getting into all this trouble, and she's had enough. She wants him for herself, start a family with him, start a new life with him, and he doesn't want that until Tom Hardy, Johnny, dies, gets killed by somebody who wants to take over the gang, who has beef with Johnny for not letting him join the gang in the first place. And it's this whole deal. It's just part of that development of the gang over the years. I don't really want to get into all the details of everything that happens. I do recommend the movie, so I do think people should watch it. And I'm not just gonna, like spoil every scene for you. But after Johnny dies, that's the buildup I was talking about with Austin Butler's character, with Benny, that's when we see him cry. And there's this big thing in the beginning of the movie where Kathy is like, I've never seen him cry, even when he almost got his foot cut off, when he got jumped. Even when all of this other stuff happened, he never cried. He only came close to crying when he thought he couldn't ride his motorcycle anymore. And then when Johnny dies, who's the person who presumably ignited or at least continued his passion with motorcycles, with friendship, they had this long relationship with each other, this special bond that they had. When Johnny died, Benny just gave it all up. He just gave it all up. He had a cry. He went back to Kathy, and then they went to have just a regular life together. In the end of it, really, it just got too out of hand for most people. Some people stuck around. A lot of people left. So we really get to see this whole thing, this group of people go from start to finish over the course of these couple of years. And it was an interesting journey. Like I said, it wasn't as eventful as I had expected, but it wasn't a detriment. I never expect a character study, but I'm usually delighted when I am given one. The pieces of story that there were throughout the film, I did enjoy those as well. So Bikeriders, that's really all I have to say about it. I do think that if any of that sounds interesting to you, you should definitely go see it. I would recommend it, with the knowledge that it's not like an incredible movie. It's not like an amazing film. There were some parts where I thought it was a little bit slow, but that's because it wasn't, like I said, not super eventful. So at times it felt slow. But sometimes that's not a bad thing. Slow burns are okay sometimes. I give this movie a 3.5 out of 5. But like I said, I do recommend it. And one last thing about the Bikeriders that was funny. Right before I watched the movie, I saw a tweet that was like a letterbox screenshot of like someone going to see the Bikeriders, and all of their friends below, because on Letterboxd you can see what all your friends rate a movie. All their friends below gave it a 3.5, all of them. And the average rating for the movie at the time, I'm not sure if it still is, was 3.5. And the tweet said that Bikeriders is the most 3.5 movie of all time. And I was like, we'll see about that. And then I watched it and I was like, yeah, it's definitely a solid 3.5, not a point less, not a point above. That's all I have to say about the Bikeriders. At the end of the day, I did enjoy it. I had a good time. All right. Now to get into the downer portion of the video, where we talk about Kinds of Kindness, the new film by Yorgos Lanthimos. Let me just say about Kinds of Kindness, if I wasn't a Yorgos hater after Poor Things, I'm definitely a Yorgos hater now. Like, I hated Poor Things. I probably didn't, I disliked it more than I disliked Kinds of Kindness. Kinds of Kindness wasn't as, like, I don't want to say offensive because I'm not, like, offended by sexual things, but that's like kind of the only word I can say for it. I wasn't as offended by Kinds of Kindness as I was by Poor Things, and I wasn't offended by the sex stuff. I was offended by like the idea of a lot of things that happened. I'm not going to get into Poor Things. I got into it a little bit in my Oscars recap video, so I guess if you're interested on my Poor Things you can watch that. But I very purposely didn't want to make a video about it because I didn't know how to explain myself and explain that like I understood the movie, and I'm not offended by the sexuality in it. Even there's like a lot of it. It's not that. It's just the story in itself. I just had a big problem with it, and I really did not enjoy it. but I know I couldn't really put that to words properly if I made a video about it. But Kinds of Kindness, I feel like I could definitely put into words why I didn't like it. So Kinds of Kindness stars all the Yorgos regulars, plus some that are new to him that are becoming regulars, such as Jesse Plemons. Emma Stone is in it. Emma Stone has been in a lot of Yorgos movies. Of course, she was the star of Poor Things. She was in The Favorite, all that. She's going to be in his next one that's already been announced. Let her go, Yorgos. For the love of God, let Emma Stone go. Emma and Willem Dafoe and everybody else who's in all his movies, stop it. I know you're like, I know you want to be in his movies. I'm sure you're having a great time being nominated for your Oscars and all that bullshit, but please be in good movies again and work with better directors again. I'm sick of my only Emma Stone outlet being Yorgos movies for what feels like forever now. It hasn't been, because like before Poor Things and she was in The Favorite, she did other stuff in between that, but it just feels like everything that's announced with Emma Stone's name is now associated with Yorgos, and I'm over it. Let her go. And he's going to do the same thing with Jesse Plemons. I know it. Let him go. I like him. Don't taint him for me. I feel like I'm in the minority as hating Yorgos movies, but I just do. And I'm going to do my best to talk about why in hopefully under an hour. Okay, so Kinds of Kindness is an anthology. It's 3 separate stories loosely connected by one character. The connection doesn't matter. It's just 3 separate story ideas starring all the same people, obviously as different characters in each story. So I guess I'm just going to kind of break down each of them and then generally talk about what I hated. I don't think I liked anything. I'll try to find some positives. So, anthology. The first one is called The Death of RMF. RMF is a character name, and he's the character that connects all 3 of these. In this one, Jesse Plemons plays a guy who is completely controlled by Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe is his boss. He controls everything that he eats. He picked out his house for him and paid for it. He picked out his wife, Hong Chow, plays Jesse Plemons' wife. Willem Dafoe picked her out, set it up, told him that he's not allowed to have kids. So when they try to have kids, Willem Dafoe sabotages it. Jesse Plemons is one day told to crash his car at a certain time into a certain other car. He tries it. He doesn't go hard enough, so he doesn't really damage the other car, or hurt the other person like he was supposed to. And he was supposed to be hurt enough to end up in the hospital, and he wasn't. So Willem Dafoe tells him to do it again, and he decides that he can't do it. It's too dangerous. He doesn't want to be responsible for the death of another person if he ends up killing the person that he crashes into. This is like the first time he's defied him. Willem Dafoe has controlled every aspect of his life, every single aspect of his life for like 10 years at this point, I think they say. After Jesse tells him that he doesn't want to crash his car, Willem drops him completely. He's like, you're fired. I don't want to talk to you anymore. You can keep your house. You can keep your wife, have all the children you want. I don't care. I'm done with you. And this tears Jesse Plemons apart. He cannot handle it. He is a sobbing little crybaby trying to get back to Willem Dafoe. He goes to his house, talks to his very young girlfriend, played by Margaret Qualley, trying to get back in his good graces, and it doesn't work. His wife leaves him because he reveals that he'd been controlled by Willem Dafoe for the past 10 years. She can't handle it. She leaves. His life is falling apart because it is no longer being controlled by Willem, and he has no idea what to do with himself because every single aspect of his life has been controlled for the past 10 years. He finds out that he has essentially been replaced by Emma Stone. Replaced, or she's also being controlled by him, and then now she is the one who's being told to crash into that car. And he notices all these similar things between him and Emma Stone, who he just happens to see walking with Willem Dafoe one day. He runs into her bar, tries to pick her up in the same way that he had previously picked up his wife, and asks her out for dinner. But when they're supposed to go out to dinner, he finds out that she's in a car crash. And so she did the same car crash that Jesse was supposed to do, hitting the same guy but not killing him. But it was hard enough that her, Emma, and the man RMF, who was to be hit by the car, both end up in the hospital. Jesse sees this as an opportunity to kind of finish out the mission and kill RMF. So he takes him out to the parking garage, runs him over, kills him as a way to get back into Willem Dafoe's good graces. And it works. We end that segment with Jesse Plemons cuddling in between Willem Dafoe and Margaret Qualley. And he is presumably back to being controlled by Willem Dafoe, and things are back to normal for him now. Willem takes him back. And that's the end of the first segment, The Death of RMF. Interesting idea. not fully developed. I can say that for all three of them, and that's why I'm going to hold on my comments until the end. I don't think it's going to be fair for me to like talk about each one afterwards, because like I could say the same things about all of them, so I'm just going to hold off. The second segment is called RMF is Flying. RMF, same character. So in this one, Jesse Plemons is a cop, and his wife, Emma Stone, is lost at sea. She's like a biologist or something, and she's on this boat mission, and she gets lost at sea with this crew of people. He is comforted by his cop friend, Mamadou Athie, who he was in the previous one too. Every person that I'm saying is in all of them, but sometimes they're just not important to mention at the time. But after just a couple of days or weeks, not sure exactly the timeline, Emma Stone is found, and Jesse Plemons reunites with her, but he's convinced that she's not really her. She's not really his wife. She's somebody posing as his wife, and he starts to kind of lose it a little bit here and there and become more and more unhinged as this segment goes on. He starts to notice little things that aren't like her. Like as soon as she comes home, she eats a leftover chocolate cake that's in their fridge, when previously we learned that she didn't like chocolate, and just little things like that. She's just kind of acting in a little bit of strange ways. Her shoes no longer fit. So just little details like that he's noticing that has him convinced that she is not who she says she is. She is not really his wife, and everybody else thinks he's crazy. And this is all perfectly explainable. She's been lost at sea for several days or weeks. So of course, she's not going to be completely back to normal when she comes back. And while Jesse Plemons is kind of like on this downward spiral, he ends up shooting a civilian in a traffic stop. The civilian is Joe Alwyn. So this gets him on leave. So now he is stuck at home with Emma Stone, who he's convinced is not his real wife. And he kind of tests her. He stops eating, and she is desperate to get him to eat anything. She says, anything you want, anything, I'll make it for you. And he tells her to cut off one of her fingers and cook it, and he'll eat that. And she does. She cuts off her thumb, cooks it for him, and gives it to him to eat, which he doesn't eat. He's just kind of torturing her. And then after that, he says he's hungry again, and this time he wants to eat her liver. So she obliges, or tries to oblige. We see her in a chair, blood everywhere, with her liver cut out and on the floor next to her. And obviously, if she's dead, Jesse Plemons sees this, doesn't really have any emotion, and then immediately goes to his front door, where behind it is the real Emma Stone, presumably at least, his real wife. And they embrace, and it ends. And by the way, the RMF character in this one was the helicopter pilot that rescued Emma Stone. So there's the connection there. Okay, and then the last segment is called RMF Eats a Sandwich. This one's a bit of a doozy. This is like the main episode. At least it felt like it. It felt like the longest one. I haven't looked up the timing of each one in the movie. I don't think it matters, but this one felt long. This one felt like the most complete story, but also the most incomplete. Like we were coming in halfway to a movie. Like we were entering halfway into a story that was already being told. That's how all of them have felt, actually. But again, I'll get into that in a second. RMF Eats a Sandwich. Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons are cult members. They're not married in this one. They just are members of the same cult. And they're trying to find a woman with special powers who can raise the dead. Presumably, they're trying to find this for their cult leader, who's Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe and Hong Chow are a couple, and they are the cult's leaders. We open this segment with Emma Stone examining Hunter Schafer, but Hunter Schafer ends up not being able to do it, so they go off and try to find the actual woman. And Emma Stone thinks she sees this woman in a dream, so when Margaret Qualley approaches Jesse and Emma in a restaurant, she says, "Oh, that looks like the woman in my dream." So Margaret Qualley, or her twin sister actually, Margaret Qualley's twin sister, also played by Margaret Qualley, is the woman that they have to try to find. Meanwhile, while all this is happening and they're going from like hotel to hotel and like going around trying to find this woman, they come back to the compound now and then to have sex with the cult leaders because part of this cult, there's a lot of rules. They didn't go over them, but we kind of pick some things up as we're watching. One is that the members can only have sex with the cult leaders. They can only have sex with Willem and or Hong Chow. And if they have sex with anybody else, they are tainted. And they have to be put in a sauna for a long period of time until they pass out to try to like decontaminate themselves if they have sex with somebody else. They also drink the cult leader's tears. They cry into this like big pool, and then everybody kind of fills up water bottles and stuff, and that's like the only water that they drink. So that's another little cult thing that they do. And there's other members in this cult. It's like a big group, but we really only follow Jesse and Emma. Also on this mission to find this woman, Emma secretly visits her estranged husband and daughter, who she presumably left to join this cult, but she still loves her daughter. And so she goes and like visits her, drops little gifts off in her room when they're not home, promises her husband to visit every now and then, runs into him. Her husband is played by Joe Alwyn, and their interactions are very awkward, which I'm sure if your wife leaves to go join a sex cult, I'm sure every interaction with her is going to be very awkward. While trying to go find Margaret Qualley's twin, Emma Stone goes and visits her husband because she runs into him in public. He drugs her and then takes advantage of her. She wakes up the next day. The cult leaders find out immediately. She is deemed contaminated. They try to sauna the contamination out of her. It doesn't work, and they kick her out of the cult. And she is distraught over this, and she thinks the only way that she can get back into the cult is if she finds Margaret Qualley, because that's the woman that they're looking for. So she finds her, sticks her in a neck, knocks her out, takes her to a morgue, and even when she's still mostly unconscious, Emma Stone puts her hand on a dead body, and the body raises from the dead. The body being the man, RMF, who is connecting all the stories. She takes Margaret Qualley to the parking lot, does a cunty little dance, and then drives off. But on the way to the compound, she gets in a car crash. Margaret Qualley goes through the windshield and dies. And that's how RMF Eats a Sandwich ends, and that's how the movie ends. Except for a post-credit scene where that character, RMF, who was just raised from the dead, eats a sandwich. And that's Kinds of Kindness. That's what happens in all 3 segments of Kinds of Kindness. Obviously, I did not give every single detail, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, you could watch it because there's a lot of stuff that I did not mention and a lot of characters I did not mention, but there you go. I will say, obviously, by my attitude, you could probably tell that I don't recommend it, but I also know that a lot of people tend to like Yorgos movies. I mean, Poor Things won multiple Oscars, even though I personally hated it so much. So you know, maybe it's just me. And I think a lot of people liked The Favorite and The Lobster and whatever other, Dogtooth, Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I like Killing of a Sacred Deer, but I liked it as a really disturbing, yucky horror movie. I don't think disturbing and yucky works in every movie, and all of his movies have at least some element of disturbing yuckiness, so it doesn't always work. And Kinds of Kindness is no different. Each segment had like one moment of shock, which was a little more tame than I was expecting. Like in The Death of RMF, the shocking moment is Jesse Plemons runs over RMF multiple times with his car. And that's the moment. It's at the very end of the segment. Same with RMF is Flying. The shocking moment is at the very end of the segment when Emma Stone cuts out her liver, also cutting off her thumb, but both of those things happen at the very end, and it's just like one shocking blood, and then it's over. And then with RMF Eats a Sandwich, it's the very end scene when Margaret Qualley shoots out of the car front windshield. It's one very shocking moment, and then it's over. And, you know, I talk about use of shock sometimes in multiple different movies. I've mentioned it. I think this one was a little underutilized because it was kind of like the punchline of every segment was a bloody shock. But I would have liked a little bit more hint of that if that's what we were going for. Like, I don't think it works as a punchline because yes, shock is supposed to be shocking, but also, I would have liked a little bit more of those elements to kind of build it up a little better, so it didn't just feel like it came out of nowhere. And I don't know, that's just kind of how I felt about it. Also, Yorgos, he's definitely an auteur, and by that I mean he has very similar themes and ideas throughout all of his movies, executed in different ways, and sometimes very, very similar ways. One thing about him that I've noticed in the movies of his that I've seen is all the weird sex stuff. There's always weird sex stuff. Sometimes throughout the whole movie and pretty much every scene, just like in Poor Things. In Kinds of Kindness, there's some weird sex stuff at different points of every segment. In the first one has the least bit amount of weird sex stuff, at least that I can remember. But in The Death of RMF, Willem Dafoe controls every aspect of Jesse Plemons' life, including when he has sex, and telling him that he doesn't want to have children. So that's kind of the only thing. And also, it's implied that he sleeps with Margaret Qualley. It makes sense that Willem Dafoe is controlling Jesse's sex life because he controls every aspect of his life. That's fine. that's fine when it comes to the sex stuff. And let me just say, I always feel the need to get defensive whenever I talk about sex in movies, because I want to say I'm not a prude. I'm fine with sex in movies. I like sex in movies. I'm a huge advocate for keeping sexuality in movies when a lot of people say, oh, it's unnecessary. I don't care. It doesn't even have to be a big part of the story necessarily. It all depends. It's fine. I just don't like the way that Yorgos uses sexuality in movies, or just sex in general. Yorgos specifically makes me uncomfortable with his weird sex stuff, but he makes me uncomfortable with a lot of the weird things in his movies, not just the sex stuff. Everything in Yorgos movies to me feels very alien, and that's across pretty much every movie of his I've ever seen. Everything is so strange in this world that he has created in each of his movies. These different worlds. It feels like an alien making a movie that's supposed to be relatable to humans, but everything about it, everything the characters say, everything that they do, how they talk, how they act, how they move, how they relate to each other, engage with each other, the events that they go through, it's all very strange and weird and uncanny valley in a way that to me just doesn't work, just makes me feel uncomfortable. Like it makes it feel not real in a way that I just can't engage with properly. For me, I don't know what it is. It just feels like he doesn't know about the human experience, and so he's trying to think of what the human experience might possibly be. And it's really hard for me to explain. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. That's really all I'm going to say about that. But continuing with the sex stuff, in the second segment, RMF is flying, that's when I really rolled my eyes, because early on in that segment, when Jesse Plemons is sad about his wife being missing, and his cop friend and cop friend's wife come to visit and have dinner with him to make him feel better, Jesse Plemons is like, we should watch some tapes. And they were like, no, I think that would be awkward if we watch those tapes. No. And Jesse Plemons like wears them down. He starts to cry or whatever. So they watch the tapes. And the tapes are of the two couples, Jesse and his wife, his cop friend and his wife, all having sex with each other. They're having a foursome, and it's very graphic, obviously. And they just sit and watch it, and then it's the next scene. And it's not really revisited until later when Emma Stone returns, and all four of them are having dinner together to celebrate her return. And she's like, so we're going to go up to the bedroom or what? And they're like, no. Like, you just got back from being missing. Are you sure that's the best idea?
Should we all go upstairs to the bedroom?
I think it's best we don't go up to the bedroom tonight.
So what, we're gonna fuck on the table? Come on, Daniel, that would be weird.
We'd better be getting home soon.
But I was kind of like, why? Why do we need to include that they have sex with their friends and make videotapes about it? And then he wants to watch it together? Like, what does that have to do with any other part of the story? It was just extremely gratuitous for the sake of gratuity. I don't know. That's, again, something I felt very strongly about Poor Things, where some of that I was like, I get where we're going here, and I get how sex is obviously a very important part of the story. I didn't think it should have been, but that's, again, I'm not going to get into Poor Things. I promise I'm not going to get into Poor Things. But it was just so gratuitous, because I felt like in Poor Things, I'm not going to talk about it, but I am. In Poor Things, it's like, we get it. I don't need to see her have sex 1,000 times to understand what you're trying to tell me here. And with this one, it was kind of like, it was very separate from the rest of the story. And as soon as like they started having sex, my boyfriend looks over at me, and I was like, literally rolling my eyes, because he knows that that's the problem I have specifically with Yorgos movies. One of the many is his weird sex stuff. I don't feel that way about sex in any other movie, just Yorgos movies. And then in the last one, RMF eats a sandwich. Obviously, I mentioned already that they have sex with the cult members, so there is a shot of Willem Dafoe naked on a bed waiting for Emma Stone to get into the bed and have sex with him. And then, of course, she gets taken advantage of by her husband, Joe Alwyn, which that part fit into the story very well because I understood the lead up to events. And rape is terrible, obviously, but it is used for a purpose in films sometimes, because that's the thing that happens in life sometimes. And it wasn't graphic. I appreciated that scene wasn't graphic, but just the mention of sex stuff. I guess in RMF Eats a Sandwich with the cult members, having the frame of it being a cult, the weird sex stuff makes sense. Honestly, I think Yorgos needs to make movies about cults. Like, his characters need to all be in a cult, and then all the weird stuff he makes them do and say makes sense. Because I think this segment felt the least alien because it was the most alien, because it was this weird cult with these weird rituals. But I understood that. I'm not meant to believe that these are just normal people existing in the world like I'm supposed to believe in the previous two. I'm supposed to believe that those are things that actually happen in the real world, right? Even with Willem controlling Jesse Plemons in the first one, like, yeah, that's a weird thing, but it's not like they were in a cult, I guess. But they didn't mention that that was a cult. It's just this guy happens to control Jesse Plemons. His boss just happens to control every aspect of his life. That's to reiterate to my other point that I kind of alluded to earlier, where I felt like each one of these stories was like the second half of a story. And I would have liked to see the first half because maybe the second half would have made more sense. It was missing all the buildup. It was missing the exposition. It was missing the development of characters and story in general. We entered everything as it was happening, halfway through it. In some cases, we entered at the end of the story, it felt like. So I think all three of these could have been developed very well into their own singular film. This movie, by the way, Kinds of Kindness in general, way too long. Way too long. It was 2 hours and 45 minutes. I hate that, like, the standard time, like the standard runtime for movies these days is like 2 hours. I know that's not true for every movie, but it really feels like every like big movie coming out nowadays is 2 hours. I want to go back to 90 minutes. 2 hours and 45 minutes is way too much. And it just made me feel like, why couldn't we take one of these ideas and expand it into its own film? Any three of these, as much as I disliked them, I still would have disliked all three of them if they were their own movie, but I would have given it credit for being a fully developed story. And maybe I wouldn't have disliked it as much because more things would have made sense. We would have had more like world building, character building, exposition, like I said, but all three of these just felt like their own underdeveloped ideas, and any one of them could have been a full thing. Or if they played up the connection piece of it, because like I mentioned, the only connecting bit of all three of these, aside from it's the same actors in each one, but they play different characters in each one. So you have to assume like each one is a different world, a different alternative universe. The character of RMF is in all of them. And the connection almost worked. His character was important in all three of them, but was also barely in all three of them. He just very loosely connected them. And it would have worked more if they put it in order, because he dies in the first one when Jesse Plemons runs him over back and forth with his car. But then in the second one, RMF is flying. He's the helicopter pilot. So he's alive, and he's the helicopter pilot that brings Emma Stone home. And then in the third segment, RMF Eats a Sandwich, he is raised from the dead by Margaret Qualley. And I feel like just a little thing, if they had just rearranged it, so it was that he was alive and then he died and then he was risen from the dead, or even he died and then was risen from the dead, and then the last one when he was alive and he was the helicopter pilot, just it would have, changing the order a little bit would have made the connection between the three segments that much stronger. But there's no reason why they had to connect. It was so loose that they connected over this one character. Hey, Editing Raven here. So I realized in looking back on my review of Kinds of Kindness, I kind of neglected to mention the other overarching themes of all three of the segments. I talk about how the only thing that connects them is the character RMF. That's not true. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how the other like story themes and ideas that connect all three of the segments. There are similar themes, ideas, imagery that connect all three of them as well. A really big one of those is control. The loss of control, regaining of control, wanting control, losing control, in all different ways, but also sort of in similar ways throughout each one. There's just different images. There's injuries, accidental, on purpose. There's hospital visits in each one. Destructive couple dynamics, unhealthy couple dynamics. themes of love in Control as well, and how love and control connect to each other in mainly unhealthy ways. So all three of them actually do carry over the same or similar general arcing themes. Obviously, there are variations in each one. There are different portrayals of these themes, of these images, but they are all connected from a cinematic standpoint. They are all connected from a story standpoint in some way. It is not just that one character RMF that I mentioned. It is actually a lot of things that do connect these stories. Everything that I need to say about it, I've already said with like the weirdness and the alienness. Yorgos, his mind just doesn't connect with mine. It's just really not my style. I don't like how he does things. I don't like how like he sets up shots. I don't like how he films things. I don't like the dialogue. I don't like how he directs his actors. I don't like how they say things. I don't like what they're saying. I don't like what they're doing. I just don't like it. It just bores me and makes me feel uncomfortable and disgusts me, not just because of sex either. Like, the sex doesn't disgust me, it just weirds me out, but everything disgusts me. Like, everything that they're doing, I'm just like, ugh, these people are terrible. These people are horrible, and these stories are terrible and weird. And not in a good way, because I like weird. Like, that should be obvious, but it's just this style of weird is just not for me, you know? And Yorgos, I've decided he's just not for me. So Kinds of Kindness, didn't like it all. I think I gave it half a star out of 5, just because it probably maybe deserves 1, because I definitely disliked Poor Things a lot more. The one thing that Poor Things had going for it, though, is it looked beautiful. The costumes, the cinematography, the production value looked gorgeous. Kinds of Kindness was just bland, all bland with what I was looking at, with the wide shots. There was no interesting shots I can remember, no interesting lighting I can remember. Costumes were just regular, normal people costumes. So Poor Things actually had a 1-up on Kinds of Kindness. I was just less disgusted and offended by Kinds of Kindness, but was still uncomfortable with it and just didn't like it. I just don't vibe. With Yorgos is what I'm saying. If you do, great. I don't. And nobody is going to make me change my mind about that. But I would love to know what you all thought about Kinds of Kindness and the Bikeriders. I could probably rant about it for so much longer, but I feel like I'm definitely repeating myself now. And that's really all I need to say about both of these films. So let me know what you thought. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Bye. Thanks for watching, honeybees. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye. Meow. Hi, honeybees. Fuck. Eden.